What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed, the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. We have been reporting on this for 7 months, something like that, 6 months. And recently, Canada Land just put out the last installment of Ratfucker, their pod series that featured the Klondike Papers and David Wallace and Richard Marsh, and the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church and their political connections. And also I decided a couple weeks ago that once a week I was going to do a Plymouth Brethren show, just so we could at least kind of review what may have happened recently on the Get a Life podcast, and in this case on the Ratfucker podcast. And here to help me do that are people that you both know, David Wallace and Richard Marsh. How you doing, guys?
Very well.
Good. Richard, Ratfucker just ended. Just can you give me like an overall synopsis on how you felt the pod series was? I thought the reporting was good. I thought I thought the series was helpful in trying to get the message out about the Plymouth Brethren. Can you just give me your sense on how you feel the docuseries was overall?
Yeah, I was surprised how little of the story it actually covered. It skipped through it and touched a lot of the most interesting points, but there was an awful lot that could have been said that wasn't said. And I guess I hadn't realized just how much stuff has actually happened, not just in my life, but in other people's lives. So you could call this a kind of a taster or a teaser for the full story. I felt it was very, very well presented, very engaging. There were a few inaccuracies, nothing of substance or that affected the meaning of the story. But if I was to make a criticism, I would have said, they could have checked back with me on a few points. There were some chronological errors in terms of the sequencing of it. Nothing, as I said, that affected the meaning. But yeah, so overall, very potent. But as I said, a teaser.
David, given that you are the Ratfucker, can you tell us how you felt about the series overall?
I thought it was extremely well produced. But much like your favorite book, once it's adapted, what makes it onto the screen sometimes bears little resemblance to the original source material.
Can you give me an example? What do you mean?
I think most of the most juicy bits probably got left on the cutting room floor. Jesse and Charisse, when they came to Calgary, they did many hours of tape. And I guess I can understand it because some of the individuals named are extremely litigious. So perhaps those were editorial decisions that were made. But in terms of presenting the stories that they did, they were, the broad strokes were there. And, for simplicity's sake and probably to keep the narrative flowing, to make it simpler for the audience, some decisions were made. So by and large, I was impressed with it. I mean, the only quarrel I take is stating that you can find nothing in the convoy. I've stated over and over that the Klondike Papers are by no means an exhaustive roadmap to every action that's taken place in Canada in the last half decade or decade. Those are just things I kept to remind myself of what was going on, such as naming that there was, in fact, a member of the Prime Minister's security detail. I knew that because I've utilized people as snitches but I didn't want to mention that because I wasn't sure I was completely retired, but it seems I am. On the whole, though, I thought it was well produced, and I think that Jesse will probably follow up if there's demand. And I know that a lot of really hard news stories will be covered for this, and it also shines a light on the work that you guys have done for months. I think it adds that those eyeballs that had not heard of this to this part of programming, and maybe it strikes a bell. So good.
I wouldn't have even known from listening to Ratfucker that we did any work. No, I'm just kidding. There's a small part of me that feels a little bit, I don't know what the word is. It's not because I want to be careful not to give the impression that like my ego is hurt. And it's not really about ego, but I heard him reference Press Progress. I heard him reference the Get a Life podcast. I heard him reference, I think they referenced the CBC story at one time. There was so much content in Ratfucker that I feel that we covered already. Without really much of a mention, I was a little confused about that. It doesn't really matter in the long run because, what really matters is more and more people see the story, which leads me to my next question, Richard, is that do you think that this pod series will finally give the awareness of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church a little bit of a boost? Have you heard anything like, I know this is just sort of like you predicting something, but do you think that it will help?
100%. I mean, Land isn't quite what we call mainstream media, but it has sufficient coverage and reputation that if mainstream media continues to ignore these stories, then very, very serious questions are going to be asked. I mean, they basically can't now continue to stonewall these stories. And in fact, of course, the first episode of Ratfucker, which covered the Calgary Nenshi story, mainstream media leapt in on that, which is a little two-faced of them because they've all had the Klondike papers for 6 months, but they just wanted someone else to go first, it's what I call the canary in the coal mine. They see if the canary dies, and then if the canary's okay, then they know they can follow, which doesn't say much for their courage. But
yeah,
get on with it, guys. No one's been sued. Oh, except for David, of course. David has been threatened with being sued, at least. But that has nothing to do with the Klondike papers, ironically.
No. David, why are you being sued?
If your legal advice for the person suing me, I don't even remember the fucker's name, pardon my language, but if the legal advice you received to proceed with that is as good as the case you're planning, I'm gonna really enjoy this.
Yeah.
Someone's suing you because I mean, I don't want to really get into that, but you're being sued by, I don't remember who's suing you. I know the amount is like $4,000.
Flutter, fart, or something of that.
Yeah, and it's because of a tweet.
Fill the brand or something.
Yeah, it seems like pretty cheesy. David, the whole thing about Trudeau taking out Trudeau. Mm-hmm. What I found interesting, because when we covered that a long time ago on this podcast, I remember discussing, we discussed it 2 or 3 times, and I remember thinking, when someone says take him out, I guess we could assume that they might mean one thing that's really violent. But we live in an age where scandal, and you know this because this was your job, is used as a weapon to get people to be removed from office. And that was always the impression that I got with that conversation, with the reporting of the story of talking with Nathan and who was it? Brad Mitchell and
Rodney Diplock and a gentleman named Mick Strange, and at the top of the call, Gerald Chapor.
Right, and when they said, but we want Trudeau to be taken out by any means necessary. Do you not think, like in hindsight, that was more about attach a scandal to this man to get him out of office?
Well, I don't need the benefit of hindsight, James. If you listen to my original statements during the first podcast I made, I never claimed that Brad Mitchell meant to kill him. I took it as simply meaning to smear the man, to create a scandal, to get rid of him. However, the problem was the interpretation that a man such as Nathan Jacobson might have. His interpretation is, or could be, wholly different than mine, simply due to the natures of our areas of purported expertise. Now, I took it as smear the man. What is puzzling is Mr. Mitchell certainly didn't seem to shoot the idea down with Nathan when Nathan brought it up. He wasn't as insistent. He didn't protest at all. I don't think that he meant it, but I think he was more than willing to listen to something like that. But I never claimed that I thought he wanted him murdered right off. Never.
Mm-hmm. One of the good things that one of the few good things there were a bunch of good things that came out of Ratfucker was the attaching of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church to their UBT businesses. I actually thought they took a really scenic route to get to the point where it was like, these are cult companies. Like, it's okay. They were like, how do we connect the Richard Marsh being hunted from UK to here? And I was just like, they're all part of the same umbrella, right? Like, it seemed like they didn't, like Jesse and Charisse didn't. It felt like they either were nervous to make the connection or didn't make it like as obvious as I thought they should have, which is like, that's how they're connected. The UBT companies that are all kind of daisy chained around the world. This is one
daisy chained. I like that.
Yeah, this is one mechanism. Richard, did you feel the same way? Like that, like they seem to really be overly careful on those points?
I didn't particularly notice, but then of course I knew the connection anyway, so I probably wouldn't have registered. One thing that is interesting on that point is that Damien Hasty, who you will find on Twitter, has I don't know if he's exactly got the complete and full proof, but it seems to be very clear that all those 60 or 70 PBCC companies that got the COVID contracts in the UK were not, obviously they were interconnected by all being brethren, but it seems like all of them, or nearly all of them, were simply front companies for Unispace, which is owned by Gareth Hales, son of the man of God. So, and then, of course, what comes out of that is that the National Health Service or the government thought they were purchasing from UK companies, which governments like to purchase, obviously, from their own country's businesses, while in reality they were purchasing from an Australian company which had 50 or 60 UK front companies. So that's something that's going to be emerging, I think, very soon and very clearly.
Did they do the same thing in Australia and the UK as they did here, which is like, you said front companies. Here, It's like they didn't even try to build a front company. It's like, Klondike lubricants, specializing in industry oil or whatever it is, for harsh environments, I think, all of a sudden are like dealing with PPE equipment.
That's what I meant by a front company. I mean, mostly they took existing brethren companies and used them as a front. There were a few cases of new companies set up in a vast hurry, but just like here, a lot of the companies supplying the PPE in the UK had no previous connection with healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting, David. Do you think that? Do you think that it's still the residue of having a fixer sort of be the source for all of this stuff? Is that still bothering editors? Like, have you talked to any reporters? Because I know you talk to them sometimes, but.
No, I don't think that's the problem at all. I think this comes down to one thing. I mean, there have been people whose reputationally have been fathoms and miles worse than me that have been lapped up by the media. It comes down to powerful connections and money. Where there's money and there's political connections, you are bound to get silence from the mainstream media. You're asking these people to go after themselves. I mean, the owners of these establishments and the people they do business with, their circle of friends, the mainstream media is the problem. It's the people we're going after. They're the ones that accept payment that are funneled through religious organizations that are not taxed or overseen by any agency. Those flow in and they find their way into companies and lobbying groups such as Post Media, which are sure not going to blow the whistle on themselves. That's my opinion, allegedly.
Do you think that is the reason why they were able to get that advertising wrap around the front page of the National Post? That I don't remember what it said, but it was about Trudeau and how we need to replace him or something like that. And they put
hypocrite or something.
Yeah.
Listen, Brad Mitchell told us in that Zoom call that he could call any big city paper and have front page news with whatever we could dig up or whatever we could manufacture. He made no bones about that. He said that they had stroke, and the man showed it. I think that's why he bragged about trying to set Trudeau up with allegedly being sexually involved with a younger woman. What was that? Prior to which election was that? 2017?
Yeah, I got fooled by that one too. But the thing was about that one, interesting, because if Brad Mitchell told you the truth, that that it was him or his circle or whatever that started that rumor, they filtered that rumor through former Harper staffers, because two of my sources were longtime Harper staffers, and when they told me about that, I was like, I didn't actually report on it like it was true. It was a mistake. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done this, but I did it anyways. But all these rumors were flying around for so long, and I kept on talking to these reporters, and these reporters knew about this story, but they weren't reporting on it. And I couldn't figure out why at the time. It was probably because they didn't have enough evidence. So I tweeted out, hey, these are the rumors that are going around about Justin Trudeau, and it was with an underage student and a settlement and an NDA is basically. And I put at the bottom of the tweet, I have no idea if this is true or not. And I hit tweet, and of course that set off an avalanche of crazy, which was basically caused by me by reporting the rumor, which I shouldn't have done. But the way that the rumor circulated was really interesting, because if it did start with Brad Mitchell, it would make a lot of sense, because again, the two main sources that I had were Harper staffers, and then I talked to another reporter, and his main sources were former Harper staffers and a current, at the time, I think it was a current who was the leader of the opposition at the time, Smiley Man, former speaker.
Chucky Scheer.
Andrew Scheer. That's right. So, so that would make sense, the Brad Mitchell thing. Do you think that he was telling the truth, though? Because I know that he likes the bluster as well, from what
He may like the bluster, but I believe he was telling the truth. I mean, but look, this is nothing new. This guy is showing everybody who he is. I mean, look at the individuals he wanted me to hire to chase down debts for PPE supplies. Vinny Pazienza and Chuck Zito. I mean, this guy wanted to hire bounty hunters, bikers. He wanted to send and bring the violence. This is how they conduct themselves. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that Brad Mitchell was serious. He was bragging.
Well, I can give you another piece of evidence there, very compelling, and that is in the 2005 New Zealand elections, the Brethren hired private investigators to follow the husband of the New Zealand Prime Minister, who was Helen Clark. She was a left-wing Prime Minister. Her husband, Dr. Davis, was rumored to be gay, and there had been a report or a photograph circulated which showed him giving a hug to an openly gay male member of Parliament. And someone was kind of using this to imply that the Prime Minister's husband was potentially having an affair with this guy. So the Brethren hire a private investigator, a guy called Wayne Edua, to stalk the Prime Minister and her husband to see and to go through their garbage to see if they could possibly find any substantiation or anything to add fuel to the fire. With the intention of swinging the election, which was very closely balanced. And then, curiously enough, the private investigator goes public, a little bit like our friend here. which has the effect of hugely embarrassing the right-wing party in New Zealand and swung the election the opposite way. And so this of course is all in public newspaper. You can Google it; it's all there. There's no question about it. There was a book written about it called "The Hollow Man" by Nikki Hager. So hiring private investigators to dig dirt on the Prime Minister with the intention of removing him or her from office is something the Brethren have already done. It's already publicly been exposed. It's their MO. It's what they do. So it's not at all surprising they would want to do this. It would be surprising if they weren't doing this.
Perhaps New Zealand needs to beef up their security a bit if private investigators can just go through the Prime Minister's garbage.
Well, it hit the fan, yes. I mean, that's in the newspaper reports, what was wrong with the PM's security. You have to remember that New Zealand is, it has the population of an average Canadian city. So it's not quite so security conscious as Canada would be. But yes, it was.
Wouldn't make that bet.
Well, no. I imagine they've beefed.
They're not too secure here either.
Well,
I think we're learning now.
Yeah.
I think probably this last couple of years have made Canada and our security apparatus a little bit more careful than maybe we have been in the past. I think with the convoy stuff, with all the leaks, especially from the Ottawa Police Department to convoy organizers, that's a little disconcerting. I don't know if you heard about that, Richard.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
No, another thing I was going to say is we did an interview on our own podcast channel. That's Ex-Cult Conversations. Get a Life, Ex-Cult Conversations. We did an interview with a ex-member from New Zealand called Braden Simmons, and we went into a lot of depth about those New Zealand political scandals. So that's going to be an interesting. That'll probably be out within a week or so, but I think your audience would find that very interesting. If you don't mind me poaching your audience.
No,
a little.
please. You can, if you can go grab the YouTube link and stick it into the chat there. If you want other people to take a look at it, you go right ahead. That's totally fine. David, where do we go from here? Where do you go from here? I know we're going to do other than the podcast and everything, and we'll talk about the book stuff a little bit later. But I mean, as far as anything else that you can do, either with the Klondike Papers or beyond that, is there anything that you are planning on unveiling or unearthing in the next little while? I'm not asking you to break news necessarily, but what direction are you going in?
Well, funny you should ask. The last 10 days especially, I gave Richard a box and a collection of poems representing roughly the last half decade of my work. Digging through my pickle trunk, I put together some other care packages and sent them to media, disruptive media in 4 other different countries. And I think maybe since the last 5 years have come out and have led to some serious discussion, perhaps the last 25 years should come out. And I've done my best to see that those will hit the fan in the new year. So I imagine I'll be quite busy or quite dead, one of the two. Either way, it should be a blast.
I love how we're all having I might end up dead. Like we're all laughing at that. But I mean, if they haven't gotten you yet, I mean, what else are they waiting for? Right?
Well, if they wanted to get me, I'd be gotten. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it would be done and nobody would hear about it until they heard about it. That's just the way these things go. So I obviously am being allowed a little bit of rope to run with, which is fine. What's important here is that people wake up and realize what is going on. And what is going on is a group of oligarchs who happen to wear the costume of being conservative movers and shakers. They're not real conservatives. What they are people who represent the old world, the world of oil, the world of raping this planet of its resources, the world of having the top 1% have 85% of all wealth on the planet, while the rest starve. What they are blocking is new innovation. What they are doing is destroying true equality among human beings, finding new ways of doing things that not only sustain us as a people, but give us all our basic human rights and dignity. We need to move forward, because if we don't, we're going to get left behind. We're going to have more and more and more crimes being committed against the people by a dying system of criminals. Run for and by. Look at the situation going on in Alberta right now. It's a goddamn disgrace. You have a girl who was allegedly, I'll use that word, raped at gunpoint when she was 16 years old by a allegedly Calgary cop who went on years later to become a city councillor. And then, on the advice, allegedly, of a disgraced former Solicitor General who offered that same victim the advice that perhaps a publication ban is needed. The facts of that case didn't get out to his constituents until it was too late, and he won by 100 votes. I think when bullshit like this goes on in our society, the rule of law means nothing. And that is why I'm doing this. Because for years, I stood by and I watched it. I would fix things, but I never went to the smut. I never went to victims. I didn't turn the screws into vulnerable people. If you're bad and you're in the game, I don't care. One or the other's got to go. The guy who pays me, that guy who's paying me to get rid of it, he goes. That's fine. You're in the game. But when ordinary people, good people, and children get harmed, I'm done. I'm it. Full stop. It's time to go to war.
We have a question from Leanne Schaefer, one of our viewers, asking if you're afraid.
Afraid of what? You know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of doing something good with my life before I die. If I can't do that, that's what makes me afraid, because I got a lot to make up for. If they take me out, you know what they've done? All they've done is turn the spotlight on everything we're talking about. The crimes this church has committed, this man of God, which is really a fat pig who has raped his parishioners. He's a gangster, not a man of God. He's a scumbag. I'm afraid that I won't make a difference, and I've got a lot to make up for. That's what makes me afraid. Because I don't want to
have the man that you're referring to, right?
Look, hypocrite.
I'm sorry, say again.
That's what makes me afraid. You might be able to chop my head off, but all you'll do is make it grow 10 more, because people will notice and they'll say, screw this. When you get too blatant, and that's the point we're at, it's getting too blatant. I think it's time for our PMO to stand up and call a spade a spade. If he doesn't, it's a failure in leadership. You've got divided intelligence services, divided policing services. They're divided either over some wacko faith or some ideology. Are we a country united, a federation, or are we a group of outlaw states where we pick a la carte which laws we're going to follow? It's time to show some leadership. I expect him to do so. And if he doesn't, maybe it's time for somebody new.
Well,
that's it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, hopefully you don't die, David, for one thing. Let's just start there.
I mean, I don't want to, but.
No. Richard, I want to know. Richard, I want to know if you could tell me how you thought the description of the way that you characterized in the Ratfucker pod series, the Klondike papers, the way that that one segment of the interview where you described it as a Trojan horse of sorts. Can you kind of clarify what you meant by that?
Yeah. Very simply, it was that when David handed over his archives to me, it consisted of 80% political scandal and 20% Brethren scandal. Now, I wasn't much interested in the political scandal. I was, of course, had a very personal interest in the Brethren scandal because it mostly consisted of a plot to kill or kidnap me. But obviously, the general public of Canada, they're learning now who the PBCC is, but at that point, no one in Canada knew who they were. So obviously, it wasn't a matter of public interest if they were hunting down some escapee. But the political stuff was obviously of great public interest. So rather than just publishing the Brethren segment of it, which probably wouldn't have got very far on its own, I bundled it all into one massive document called the Klondike Papers. And from my perspective, the political stuff was just there as a way to get view. So that's the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse is something that was towed into the city of Troy under the perception it was, some kind of a monument or memorial. And then once it was in the city, the real purpose of it became evident because there were soldiers in the belly. So the soldiers are climbing out now. And I think actually I'm very surprised at how much interest there has been in the Brethren side of the story. It seems to be, basically we had one episode of Ratfucker on the politics and 2 on the Brethren, which I thought was a good sign.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was interesting because although and we did some of the stuff here, the whole allegedly joke, I guess the running joke of allegedly we started to do because of all the stuff that was being claimed on our podcast by especially yourself, David. But I think that the conspiracy theory element of this was largely organic. Like, we didn't tell these TikTokers to start making videos connecting the dots that they were connecting. We did float certain things in the air, like the Nathan Jacobson side of this with the whole alleged plot to quote unquote take out Justin Trudeau. But I mean, we didn't take it to then the TikTokers would put out in a video saying, there was a plot to kill Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And we were like, whoa. We didn't say that. We said take out. Nathan had his interpretation. David had his interpretation. I had my interpretation. And, the conspiracy theories were basically based on Nathan's alone. So I don't know who you blame for that. But at the same time, I thought it was a really interesting, sort of organic evolution of the story that people started their own, digs into what the heck the Plymouth Brethren were. There was a lot of, especially when the Klondike Papers first came out, there was a lot of, information that was being sought after from the Plymouth Brethren localities in the UK and New Zealand and Australia. And that's where I thought things started to get interesting. If you Google Plymouth Brethren Christian Church scandal right now, most of the stuff that comes up is from Australia and from the UK, right? And I thought that that's why I thought it was an obvious thing to me that when you look at your story, Richard, why was Gerald Shapur hiring people in this country to go after you? And the answer was obvious. The answer was because this is a network that is worldwide, 50,000 members, and they have each other's backs, right?
Yeah, that's part of the story. I would say it's not so much that. It's that it's a network that is very intensively centrally controlled, and the offended party was Bruce Hales himself. So he gets his lackeys and minions in North America to come after me because I was in North America. If I was in Jamaica, here to get his Jamaican minions after me. Wherever I am, he's got feet on the ground. So,
yeah. David, what is the best way to go after the sort of low-hanging fruit stories about the Brethren in Canada right now? Like, what would you suggest doing? Like, let's say you were an editor, which is a really awesome thought in a lot of ways, but let's say you were the editor of a publication. What would you be doing right now in order to unearth more Brethren-related stories?
I'd be going into every community that I could find that has Brethren, and I would simply be canvassing to see if there's any more victims of sexual assault. I believe that this behavior, it's clearly been shown to be acceptable in many cases. Get a Life podcast. It's hard at times. It's hard to listen to. It's just hard sometimes to listen to what happened to these people. But if you will get over it, because you can see that these people have decided that this is not going to define them. and I think it's something that goes on in every one of their communities, much like where the parish priest who does those filthy acts is just shuffled from one parish to the next. It seems to be a habit. It seems to be a used trick of the trade in these organizations, if you'll call it. So that's where I would go, because where there's smoke, there's fire. That's what I would say.
And Richard, one of the cool things about the documentary is the way that the last episode, the Ratfucker one, the way that the last episode kind of ended on an emotional note with you, especially when it came to your daughters. You found out recently, you said that a couple of them got married?
Yes, that's right.
And how do you not think about that daily?
Well, I mean, I have a new life. I mean, I have a daughter of my own on the way, a new one.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And I do think it's becoming increasingly likely. I think that I will be reunited with all of my children. The signs are that the church is heading up for a major schism of some kind. It's a little overdue. The last one was in 1970. Bruce Hales himself has been talking about it. He's obviously anticipating that there's going to be significant defections. And I'm pretty sure that my children will be among the first to leave, because I'm sure they know me. They know that I'm an honest person of integrity, and they know that, you know, they'll be listening to these podcasts. They have that curiosity. And I think when there is a split in the church, I know which side of it they're going to be on. So whether that will be in a year's time or 5 years' time, I don't know. But I've never been more optimistic about it.
Do you think your ex-wife will be on the same page as your daughters? And if so, would that, I mean, that's got to create sort of a confusing, reunion of sorts, wouldn't it?
That is always this is the thing with the church, that however many people split away, there's always that line of division. So it's always ripping families apart. I mean, if my ex-wife leaves, then she leaves her 9 siblings. She leaves her father. There's always you can't take a piece off a tablecloth without tearing the tablecloth. Wherever the line of division is, you're breaking families apart. So where that line falls, I don't know.
Yeah, that there's something sort of extra sinister about that doctrine of separation, isn't it? Because it's really just. Do you know what the wording is like? Because I don't think I've ever read it or anything. But the overall gist is basically choosing the cult over the family. But can you give me an idea of how it's worded?
Well, it isn't. You see, the Brethren don't have a formal code of rules. They just have about 25 feet of printed volumes of what they call ministry, which is transcripts of what are purported to be Bible readings. You know, they start with someone reading some verses of scripture, and then it's just, you know, the man of God of the day holding forth on his wisdom. And so the only way they can actually make sense of such a huge volume of work, and I'm not exaggerating when I say 25 feet, is 25 feet of solid, closely printed pages.
Do they unroll it like they do with the scrolls in the old days?
No, they have got as far as, you know, bookbinding. But yeah, it's 25 feet of books. Yeah, I mean, you're an assistant librarian. You know how much information is on 25 feet of bookshelves. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
And no pictures, all text. And so they have indexes to all this. So for each of the leaders, there's an index to the ministry by subject. So you can look up any subject, and it gives you all the page references, and then you can go and look up the page references. So if you want to look up separation, there will be thousands of references. And yeah, I mean, it's all kind of spelled out there, but not as a single neat rule. It's just lots and lots and lots of saying the same thing in different ways.
David, when you get up, well, first of all, the reason why you're hearing sniffling and sneezing is because David doesn't know how to utilize the mute button before he spreads his COVID germs all over the place.
Sorry, guys, my bad.
But David has COVID, so we're going to give you a little bit of a break. When you get up in the morning and you take a look at all of these things that have happened because of your actions after you refused to hand over Richard Marsh, how do you feel about yourself? Because it must be a complete departure from what it was like when you before that with the line of work that you were in.
Well, it's been a transition, that's for sure. I mean, it's cost a lot financially. It's destroyed me. I've lost everything. My marriage is functionally finished. My work, my career is off the table. But honestly, I mean, I feel better. I just do. There's no pressure anymore. I don't give a shit what people say. I mean, these are bought and paid for hacks or completely incompetent nincompoops who've never done anything in their lives. So I don't care. I feel good. I mean, Richard's going to have a daughter in Christmas. I mean, that's amazing, right? So that makes me happy.
Yeah, I'm happy for you too, Richard. It's quite the it's like a demarcation point of happiness for you or something, because it's been such a crazy journey for you for like, what is it, the last 4 years of your life?
6 years. Well, I don't know. I mean, how far back do you want to go? But yeah, it's the last 6 years have been very, very traumatic.
And do you feel like there needs to be a bookend for this chapter of your life in order to start your new life, where your wife doesn't like threaten to kill you because all you do is focus on this cult?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's landmarks. There's certainly landmarks on the way. I mean, there's more to do yet. But yeah, I mean, I suppose the ultimate bookend is when Bruce goes down. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, we've come a long way. A lot of landmarks have been passed, but there's a lot more to come. I think one of the things I feel most encouraged about, positive about, is just these incredible people like Lane and Cheryl and Carmen, who have joined me in this whole project, specifically in the area of North America, to try and bring some justice. It was a little bit of a lonely journey before they came along. I mean, there've been lots of very active ex-Brethren members in the UK and in Australia and in New Zealand, but in North America, I mean, Lane did that documentary a while ago, but apart from that, the ex-Brethren in North America have been keeping a very low profile, and I think the dam's broken now. And it's just great to feel part of a team. And I mean, obviously, outside of the ex-Brethren community, there's what you're doing, and there's what Alex McIntosh did with Breaking Brethren, and there's what David's doing, and there's Ratfucker, and there's all sorts of things in the works. So yeah, the whole picture has changed. Like, as we said, the hunter's become the hunted now.
Yes, that's right. Okay, that's a good way to. David, did you have something to say? There was. You said before the show that maybe you wanted to get on your political.
Oh yeah, for the fix, we're going to get that up and rolling. I mean, I know you and I are going to be in panic mode trying to get everything together. We're waiting on a couple of individuals. Basically, one of them had a baby, so his wife did anyway. So we're waiting on them to get it rolling. And I started writing, just pounding out things. I'm going about putting together 3 slim volumes of books with a possible 4th. Each one will be between 250 and 280 pages. And I've released them. The first one will be about Calgary. I call it Rat Tales. The second will be about Ontario. It's called Double Down. And the third will be In the Name of God, the hunt for Richard Marsh and the plot to remove Trudeau. So those will be available. I've put up a Patron site. It needs a lot of work, but if you want to support us, so we can.
I think Patron, hold on. Patron, if I'm not mistaken, is tequila. I think you mean Patreon.
Patreon. Sorry. Yes.
Patron is what you use to write it. Patreon is what you use to
put that up. If you want to support us, we'll be able to do a lot more really cool things in terms of Q&As, live Q&As, and we can add what people are most curious about on a more intimate basis. But if you want to visit, great. We're looking forward to it. And pretty soon those books will be available. We're going to do it through Kindle Direct Publishing and Amazon, and should be fun.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to do this once a week. At least I am. I'm going to rotate guests in and out. Richard, you'll probably be a mainstay if that's okay. And guys, thank you for joining me tonight. And I'll speak to both of you soon.
Thank
you, James.
That is Richard Marsh. That is David Wallace. And yeah, that was, it's always good to do sort of like a post-mortem when more material from the, about the Plymouth Brethren comes out. And I thought that was a good way to sort of wrap up Ratfucker. I just want to reiterate, I thought it was a good pod series. I just thought that a lot of the material was stuff that was already kind of out there, but whatever. Both David and Richard did point out something that is very true. The presentation and the production of Ratfucker was great. We do a live podcast, but it isn't quite the overall idea of a podcast and the overall idea of a pod series are totally different things. But I am just happy to be a cog in this machine that is trying to expose this group. And with David and Richard's help, we're going to continue to do that. Okay, so tomorrow we have from the Fooshnickens, one of my favorite rappers as far as his flow goes. Chip Foo's going to be on the show. That's going to be dope. I'm not going to get upset if you haven't heard of him or are not excited as I am. It's Rapper Day tomorrow, so I'm obviously really excited. On Wednesday, Sean Kelly's going to be here. He is the founder of the band Crash Kelly, and he is also the guitarist for Nelly Furtado, Helix, and Lee Aaron. So that should be fun. And then on Thursday, we have Laura Payne. She is from San Antonio, Texas. She's an ex-member of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and she has made allegations of abuse against former members or elders of the church. We'll get all that information from her on Thursday. So that is going to be a heavy one. But until then, we will see you next time on Blackballed. Thanks, everybody.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.